Guys, hope you're doing well as always, and welcome back to another video, a special video today, because we are going to be looking at 5 players that Real Madrid need to sell either in January, admittedly there's only a few days left, or at the very least at the end of the season in order for them to conquer Europe. And as I said, ladies and gents, it is a special one today because I am joined by a very special guest. For those of you that tuned into the World Cup live streams during the World Cup just gone, you'll already know this man. It is HASAN Karim, Football Daily's finest. He does the thumbnails. But this man is a Real Madrid fan, and I felt like it would be good to try and get some insight from a Real Madrid fan into the ongoings of their club. As always though, guys, if you are new here, please make sure to subscribe, like the video, and comment down below who you think Real Madrid need to sell and any other teams or any other video ideas. It helps me out, and I'm lazy. But starting things off, ladies and gents, we are starting with the big one. The reason why you clicked on this video from the thumbnail, it is Eden Hazard. And the first place that I really want to start with is by asking HASAN a few questions about his time at the club. So HASAN, mate, what would you say Real Madrid fans' attitudes are towards Hazard as a player for the club, and also just his time in general there?
It's not toxic, at least depending on what aspect you're looking at in terms of fans. If you're looking at the online basis with football Twitter, he's very much quite disliked. But if you're talking about sort of the general attitude to fans in the stadium, I mean, he's still, not whistled or booed. I think the general consensus is, it's not worked out. It's not gone how we planned. We signed Hazard on the back of his best ever season at Chelsea, arguably, probably top 4, top 3 player in the world at the time. Is at the peak of his powers.
100%. We'll definitely get into the Chelsea days later on, but why do you think that Hazard was treated differently to the likes of Gareth Bale, for example, who without question achieved so much more in his Madrid career?
I think the only reason he's kept in positive light and why he's looked at in a positive way is because of the fact that he's kind of, built himself into the traditions of Spanish culture and in the way that, the team are, you can see he's integrated within the squad, whereas Bale cut a very outside and lonely figure, which I think didn't help his cause, not only with, the club, but also the fans. And obviously, those incidents like the Wales Golf Madrid and that all the flag thing that he did when he was on national duty, and just some of the funny antics he did on the bench and stuff like that, high profile fallouts with managers and things like that as well. I mean, the only thing that saves Hazard is the fact that he has kind of really integrated himself in the club and the culture, but he should be sold.
It's an interesting comparison, and I'm definitely interested to hear what you guys think in the comments. So comment down below. You think that the treatment of Gareth Bale was fair? Personally, I don't, and I think HASAN will tell you the exact same as well. But focusing more specifically on Hazard, it is without doubt that he is a failure of a signing for this club. He cost 115 million euros from Chelsea in the July of 2019, and in his 4 years at the club, he's only featured in 73 games, scoring 7 times and assisting 11. That's a stark contrast to the 110 goals and 92 assists for Chelsea in his 252 games at the club. Now, he has struggled with injuries, which is something that has really hampered his time at Madrid, missing 72 Madrid games through injuries alone, with his longest spell out being 76 days between February and May 2020. And that injury came shortly after returning from a hairline foot fracture that kept him out for 67 days. So immediately the blame seems somewhat deflected from Hazard as a player himself and as a character within that Madrid squad. But that's not entirely true, because his lack of professionalism is really not what helps him. When he joined Madrid, he was unfit, overweight, and disappointing in pre-season, and just completely unrecognisable from the man that was terrorising Premier League defences not long before. As HASAN's already touched on, it's just not worked out for him. But HASAN, continue, mate. Why do you think that he should be sold?
We're a few years into this now. It's not like he's a young player who can bounce back and recover from these things quicker. His body's quite clearly failing him because he can't seem to stay fit for more than 5 minutes. He doesn't seem to have it anymore, even not just for Spain, for Real Madrid, sorry, but for Belgium as well. Obviously, he retired from national duty this summer, but at the Euros, was a very peripheral figure in that team, as opposed to before in the last World Cup, he was the guy. The move hasn't worked out. It's a very expensive failure as well. At the end of the day, it's not like he was a 30-40 million pound player. You're talking, a player that cost a lot of money, more than anyone else ever has for Real Madrid at this point. It's unfortunate. You can't control injuries as well and how they're going to affect somebody, but there are things that he could have controlled, and I don't feel that he did to the best level that he could have. But he has to move on for the betterment of himself, to sort of save some dignity towards the end of his career, and just sort of put a close to what's been a very, very underwhelming chapter in his career.
What was supposed to be the stuff of dreams for Hazard has turned into an absolute nightmare. A period plagued by injuries and an inability to keep fit sees him now being overtaken by the likes of Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo. And it's really sad because there are plenty of interviews from the man himself admitting how poor he's been for the club and how it hasn't worked out and his regret for that. And for me personally as a Chelsea fan, I'm obviously always going to love Hazard for what he's done for my club. But for Real Madrid, he's left a stain on the club, and for his legacy as well, he ultimately needs to be sold for that reason to try and salvage what's left of his career. Moving on to the next player, and another fairly high profile player as well, it is Marco Asensio. Last season he recorded his first 10 league goal campaign for Real Madrid, which really isn't good enough for a winger in that team. In 2018 he returned from a loan spell with Real Español, and he looked to be Real Madrid's most promising youngster at the time as well, scoring on his La Liga debut. Furthermore, he ended the season scoring a goal in the Champions League final in 2017. So Hassan, the first thing that I want to ask you is, when Asensio started playing for Real Madrid at the beginning of his Madrid career, what were your opinion and what were the Madrid aspirations for him as a player on that wing? And most importantly, where did it all go wrong?
In every competition he debuted in, he scored. He was just the wonder kid that we'd been waiting for. He looked like that kind of guy. You know, he was fast, he was direct, he could dribble, he had an absolute peach of a left foot, which he still does have to, you know, for the most part. But he looked like the guy that could carry Madrid post-Ronaldo era, which was very much approaching at that point. First season that Ronaldo left, you know, we thought we could look to Asensio as a cornerstone of the team, and he even came out in the press and said, it's up for the older guys to do that, it's not down to me. But for some reason or another, he just didn't step up, and then obviously had that ACL injury the season after, which put him out for a year, came back, and since then he's just been a very peripheral figure. You know, he's never quite regained that initial sparkle. He shows it now and again, you know, with a spectacular goal, but it's very rare and few and far between. He's become a very streaky player, resigned to being an impact player, and that's just not what we expected from him initially when he first broke through.
Now, Hassan mentioned the post-Ronaldo era, and following Ronaldo's departure, Asensio started the season fantastically with 5 assists in his first 3 games. But his form suddenly dipped and he was only involved in 3 more goals for the rest of the season for Los Blancos. From an outside, it just appeared that he became too comfortable with being that starting player for Madrid and lost that spark of desire and high work ethic that he had as a youngster trying to break into that team. But as Hassan mentioned, and similar to Hazard as well, Asensio has also suffered a major long injury, most notably the rupturing of a cruciate ligament, which kept him out for 39 games over a 249-day period. And since then, he's lost some of his trademark pace, seeing his dribbling rate of 5.13 per 90 in the 18-19 season deteriorating to 3.03 in the 21-22 season. Which then begs the question, Hassan, mate, why do you think he should be sold?
He should be moved on, because I just think his time at the club is done. I don't think, you know, he could be any more than just an impact player, someone that you would just rely on to rotate. And, you know, that those are minutes that could be given to, you know, younger players, or could be spread out more amongst, you know, the likes of Rodrigo, for example, who has to rotate with Fede Valverde. You know, those minutes are sparse between those 3 at some point. So I think for sort of clearing up the squad a little bit and getting rid of something that's a bit deadwood-like, probably is best to move him on.
Well, in 11 games this season, Marco Asensio has only achieved 1 goal and 2 assists, playing second fiddle to the star man Vinicius Jr. and still earning around 118,000 euros per week. Much like Hassan said, I feel like it'd be better for both parties if these players moved on, because there's still that opportunity for Asensio to have that point to prove at a new club and still regain his fine form. But I think enough time has passed now to suggest that it's not going to happen at Madrid, and ultimately Madrid will be so much better off saving his money on wages and getting a little bit of quid in for him so they don't lose him on a free. Up next, and probably one of the biggest transfer fails that Madrid have suffered in the last few years, is Mariano Diaz. He was sold to Lyon in 2017 for 5 million and then brought back the following season by Madrid for 21 million after acquiring 18 goals and 5 assists in 34 league games for the French side, who finished in 3rd place. So I suppose the first question is, what were Madrid fan thoughts when you re-signed him from Lyon?
The Mariano Diaz saga was one that really did frustrate me. I mean, yeah, sure, he had a good first season at Lyon, but, you know, at the end of the day, it looked clear that he wasn't going to cut it from Madrid before he left. I don't understand why we re-signed him then, even though Sevilla were very much interested in him. You know, I would much rather have seen him just go over there, because he came to Madrid and he's just done absolutely nothing since. I mean, it disgusted me at the fact that he was given the iconic number 7. You know, that's a shirt that's been worn by the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, by the likes of Raul, and it's been given to, let's be frank, for lack of a better word, a complete and utter nobody who's done nothing in the game. But, you know, it happened, and he's somehow still here.
Well, since returning to Madrid, it's not been pretty for him, averaging 15.3 90 minutes across those appearances, only scoring 8 goals. He's never truly shown the quality expected of a Real Madrid striker, and when you've got Karim Benzema starting ahead of you, you're never truly going to be in contention. And furthermore, with his reports of 106,000 euros per week to 160,000 euros per week, anything within that bracket is way too expensive for someone that's not even making the bench 90% of the time. It's extortionate for the role that he plays for that club. I suppose, Hassan, as a Real Madrid fan, what are your thoughts on how his attitude has been towards the club, his lack of playing time, and do you think that he could still do a job for a decent level side like he did at Lyon?
You know, his attitude has been, professional. He's never really been sort of out of order with the club, at least, but all with his lack of game time, I think he kind of knows his position, that he's just not someone that can be relied on in this club. He's not of our level. He just isn't, for a club that's fighting to win things, not just be in them to win things. He's not that guy. He never has been that guy. He never will be that guy. I do think he could do a job for someone like, that is looking to contend for positions in the European places, whether that be Europa League or sort of the low levels of the Champions League as well. I think, he could have done a job for the likes of Valencia and people like that, but that is his level. He's definitely not someone that should be in one of the big three in Spain.
Now, there's been reports that he said that he wants to stay at the club and he doesn't want to leave, but more recent reports suggest that he is more open to finally leaving Madrid. He's proven his quality at Lyon, so there's no reason really why he couldn't showcase that somewhere else. Perhaps a club of a similar stature would be a good move for him at this time in his career, but ultimately, for the good of Real Madrid, he needs to move on so they can try and salvage some money for him, stop spending a ludicrous amount of money on his wages, and potentially look into a more long-term replacement for when Karim Benzema leaves. Now, the penultimate player that we're going to be talking about is Odriozola. He joined the club in 2018 for 32 million euros, and he's never been more than second fiddle to Dani Carvajal, which admittedly is tough competition. He had an impressive loan spell at Fiorentina last season, starting 18 out of the 25 games that he played, but since he's returned to Los Blancos, he has not been able to feature in a single game. So, Hassan, why hasn't he played for Real Madrid since his impressive loan spell at Fiorentina?
I feel that Odriozola hasn't played because he's just not good enough. It's really that simple. He signed as a very bright prospect from La Real, and he has been poor since then. He looked genuinely like a very big prospect when he was there during his Sociedad days. I was quite excited about him when he first joined Madrid. I thought, a young Spanish fullback, it could be the future. We've had Dani Carvajal. This could be his natural successor, and for a whole host of reasons, it's just not worked out. I don't think he's really kind of kicked on since having that initial kind of burst through as a youngster. He hasn't developed his game. He hasn't changed much. He hasn't grown. Been on loan to, the likes of Bayern Munich. I mean, it's not like he hasn't had chances to show himself. There was a particular game in mind. I think it was in the first season of Zidane's second tenure at Madrid. It was a game against Mallorca away, and he just had an absolute calamitous performance. He was just a mess. Eventually got sent off, and I think after that was nail in the coffin for him. At least with Zidane, he's really sort of rediscovered it since under anybody else. And at Fiorentina, I feel like the system that he had there kind of masked his deficiencies. Does a decent enough job for sides that are kind of upper mid-table, lower sort of European spots, but not for top sides. Odriozola does need to move on because at the end of the day, we need a capable backup, and he is not that guy. Pedro Porro would be probably my first choice if I could pick somebody.
Well, with only a year and a half on his current contract, Real Madrid are going to be looking to cash in on him as soon as possible, so then they don't lose that big sum that they invested on him at the beginning of his tenure. There was interest in Odriozola from Juventus at the beginning of the season, and obviously with his relationship with Fiorentina, either of those two clubs could be a favourable move for him. Real Madrid need to cash out on this player before it's too late. Now, the final player that we're going to be looking at in this video is Renier Jesus. Jesus joined Real from Flamengo in January 2020, 2 years after Rodrigo and Vinicius Jr. joined the club, and it seemed to me like a signing that suggested cover for those two players if they didn't work out. Now, unfortunately for him, they've proven to be regulars and exceeded probably even most Real Madrid's fans' potential for those two players. And with Real Madrid playing a 4-3-3 with a holding midfielder, his favoured central attacking midfield position is currently not available to him. Right now, he plays on loan for Girona, scoring only 1 goal in 7 league appearances for the club this season, and starting only 3 games for the newly promoted side. Following a 2-year disappointing loan spell at Dortmund where he had the same feat, he only started 2 games for Borussia Dortmund in his 2 years there. It really doesn't look promising for Renier at Real Madrid, and his time there is already on thin ice, so why hasn't it worked out, Hassan? And do you see a way for him to get back into Real Madrid's plans in the future, or do you think that his fate is already sealed?
Renier Jesus is an interesting one because, at the end of the day, was signed as a huge prospect from Brazil, but it's just he's had a very miserable sort of 2 years at Dortmund after being sent out on loan there. There were questions about his attitude, his professionalism there. He was getting a lot of criticism for sort of not kind of giving his all. Girona on loan seemed like a good move for him, a club where he could get regular minutes and sort of develop his game and sort of show the wider sort of league, what he's capable of, show Madrid what he's capable of as well. Despite, a good early start as well, he's starting to regularly find minutes and form, replace Christian Stuani in the lineup, a veteran of Girona. He's been their talisman for so long, so he was starting to, take away his starting position for the most part, prior to suffering an injury, which he's still suffering from. I don't think he's actually played since something like October of last year. So it's a shame to see the fact that, just as he was kind of finding his feet, he's now sort of being put back to square one. So I'm hoping, second half of the season, once he gets himself back in from this injury, that he can rediscover some form. I don't see how he figures into the team's plans because, at the end of the day, as I said, we've signed Endrick. Rainier likes to play in those central positions. I don't see how he gets out in the wide areas either. And he's not going to play centrally, in the midfield areas either, because that's not really his game. Maybe there's still a player in there that just needs that time and attention just to kind of develop himself, get going again, and relight that fire.
Well, Benfica were actually interested in him at the beginning of the season, so this could be a really good place for him to go, try and kickstart his career and re-establish himself in a very decent league. Ultimately, with the last 3 years, it just seems like his confidence is shot, and I feel like that would be the case for any player in that position. He's only 21 years of age, so he's still got a really bright future, but right now, Madrid, he's just drowning in superior competition from the likes of the wingers that I've already mentioned, and missing that number 10 position that he desperately craves. So, ladies and gents, that does bring us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching as always, and a massive thank you to HASAN Karim as well for joining me today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the channel again, mate, and we've got some things in the pipeline for the future, so stay tuned for that, guys. You're not going to want to miss it. As always, guys, like the video if you have enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, comment down below what you think of our picks, who you think Madrid need to sign or sell, and any video ideas as well that you can think of, anything that you want me to talk about, delve into. It's fun for me, it's fun for you. Thank you so much for watching as always though, guys. I will see you in the next one. Take care, peace and love.